Ravi had always been the kind of person who liked peace, order, and logic. When he moved to Maple Grove, he thought he had finally found the perfect place for a quiet life. The neighborhood was neat and beautiful. Every house looked almost the same, with clean walls, small trees, and soft grass. People smiled when they passed each other on the street, and the air always smelled of flowers. For a man like Ravi, it seemed like the right home to settle in after years of work in busy cities. But Ravi had one habit that made him different. He loved machines. He worked as a security engineer and had spent years designing systems that protected banks, offices, and even airports. Now that he had his own home, he wanted to test new ideas in a smaller space. His garage became his workshop. He built small devices that could sense movement, hidden cameras that looked like birdhouses, and smart alarms that could talk to each other. To him, it was just fun and creativity. Most of the neighbors didn't notice what Ravi did in his garage. They were too busy with their own lives. But one person did notice. Her name was Mrs. Doyle. She was the head of the Homeowners Association, or HOA. Every street in Maple Grove had a few rules that everyone had to follow, and Mrs. Doyle made sure no one ever broke them. She loved walking around the neighborhood every morning with her notebook. If a lawn was too tall, she wrote a note. If a mailbox was the wrong color, she sent a warning. People said she could find a mistake even in a perfect garden. From the first day, Mrs. Doyle didn't like Ravi much. She said his garage light was too bright at night, and that his fence looked higher than the rules allowed. Ravi was polite to her, but he didn't argue. He just smiled and said he would check. He knew people like her didn't like being corrected. It was better to stay calm. One Friday morning, Ravi sat in his small home office checking the system he had built. On the screen in front of him was a map of Maple Grove. Each house was a small dot connected by lines. The security network he had designed covered the entire area. Cameras, streetlights, and alarms all worked together. What no one knew was that Ravi himself had created that system years ago as part of a city contract. So while the HOA believed the cameras were just standard equipment, Ravi knew every small detail about how they worked. He liked to test his own sensors during his free time. His computer showed every motion in his backyard. He had added a new feature that could tell whether the movement was a person, an animal, or just the wind. Around noon, a soft alert sound came from the monitor. The words on the screen said, "Backyard motion detected." Ravi smiled, thinking maybe a cat had climbed the fence again. But when he clicked on the camera feed, his smile slowly faded. On the screen was Mrs. Doyle. She was standing outside the fence with a silver ladder, looking left and right, as if to make sure no one was watching. She wore a wide hat and dark glasses. In her hand was her notebook and pen. She lifted the ladder, placed it against the fence, and started climbing. Ravi blinked. He could hardly believe what he was seeing. He leaned closer to the screen. "Is she really climbing my fence?" he whispered. Through another camera angle, he saw her reach the top step and peek into his yard. She was mumbling something while writing notes. Ravi turned on the microphone of the nearby sensor. Her voice came through the speaker softly. "Something strange is going on here. Machines, wires, and lights. This is not allowed under HOA rules." Ravi couldn't help but shake his head. He had done nothing wrong. Everything he built followed the local safety codes. Yet Mrs. Doyle clearly believed he was hiding something. She leaned forward, trying to get a better look inside his garage window. The ladder shook a little. She ignored it and stretched farther, still holding her notebook. Ravi thought of going outside to stop her before she hurt herself. But before he could stand up, it happened. The ladder slipped on the wet ground. Mrs. Doyle gasped as she lost balance and fell backward into the thick bushes behind the fence. There was a loud sound of branches breaking. Ravi quickly ran out the back door and hurried to the gate. When he opened the gate, he found Mrs. Doyle sitting on the ground, surrounded by leaves and dirt. Her hat had fallen off and her glasses were hanging from one ear. The ladder was lying flat on the grass beside her. "Mrs. Doyle, are you all right?" Ravi asked as he reached out a hand to help her. She looked embarrassed. "I am fine. Perfectly fine. I was just checking your fence. It looked higher than what is allowed." Ravi tried to hide a smile. "You were checking my fence from the top of a ladder?" She cleared her throat and stood up quickly. "I wanted to measure the angle. The HOA needs to make sure every fence follows the standard height." Ravi nodded slowly. "I see, you could have asked me. I would have shown you around." Mrs. Doyle brushed off her clothes and picked up her notebook. There is no need. I will note it down and check again later. Please remember that the HOA has strict guidelines. We like things uniform here. Yes, I understand, Ravi said kindly. But maybe next time you should let me know before climbing a ladder near my fence. Safety comes first? Her face turned slightly red. I will keep that in mind. She turned and walked away, pretending to write something in her notebook. Ravi noticed her limping a little. He felt a bit sorry for her, but also couldn't stop feeling amused at the situation. That evening, Ravi sat again in front of his computer. He opened the camera recordings and watched the entire scene. The video clearly showed Mrs. Doyle sneaking with her ladder, peeking inside and then falling into the bushes. He saved the file and named it HOA Visit 1. He didn't plan to share it. He only wanted to keep it for his own record, just in case she caused trouble later. As he continued checking the system, something unusual caught his eye. One of the public security cameras near the park had been turned off during the time Mrs. Doyle was at his house. The log showed that it had been manually disabled. Only a few people had access to that system: the city technician, the HOA office, and Ravi himself. Curious, he opened the command history and traced the source. The request had come from a device registered under the HOA, specifically from Mrs. Doyle's tablet. Ravi sat quietly for a moment. That explained why she had come when she did. She had turned off the nearby camera before climbing the ladder. She didn't want anyone else to see what she was doing. But why? What was she looking for? Did she believe he was hiding something dangerous? Or was she searching for something else? He didn't like questions without answers, so he decided to strengthen his system even more. He added 2 new sensors near the fence and linked them to his private network. Now he could detect anyone approaching from 10 feet away. He also set up a small light that would blink inside his study if someone entered his property. When the setup was complete, Ravi looked at the glowing lights on the screen. The neighborhood map blinked softly, each house shining like a small star. He leaned back and smiled. Everything looked calm again, but he knew it was not over. Mrs. Doyle was not the type to give up easily. The next morning, when he stepped out to get his mail, he saw her walking down the street with her usual notebook. She gave him a quick look, pretending to act normal, and then moved to another house. Ravi nodded politely, but inside his mind he was already planning. He didn't want trouble, but he wanted to know what she was really after. He glanced at his front camera and whispered to himself, "Let's see what you're up to next, Mrs. Doyle." The morning sun filtered through the trees of Maple Grove, painting the streets in warm golden light. Ravi sipped his tea as he observed the neighborhood from his porch. Everything looked calm, almost too calm. Mrs. Doyle had been walking around earlier, clipboard in hand, but she hadn't approached his yard. That made Ravi uneasy. She never gave up easily. Today he had a feeling she was planning something. Ravi returned to his garage. The hum of his computers and the soft blinking of sensors filled the room. He had connected the neighborhood's cameras to his own private server. Every corner of Maple Grove was visible to him, but in a safe and legal way. His system could detect motion, measure speed, and even determine whether a person was carrying something unusual. He had also added extra sensors near the back fence just in case someone tried to sneak a peek. He leaned back in his chair and studied the alerts. So far, nothing unusual. Birds fluttered across lawns, squirrels ran along fences, and the wind shook the trees gently. He smiled. For now, it seemed that Maple Grove was peaceful. But Ravi had learned not to trust appearances. The last time someone seemed peaceful, Mrs. Doyle had been sneaking over a ladder. Around noon, a notification popped up. Unauthorized movement detected. Backyard perimeter breach. Ravi straightened immediately. He checked the camera feed. A figure was standing just outside the back gate. It was Mrs. Doyle. She had returned, and this time she wasn't using a ladder. She was quietly checking the perimeter of his yard, as if counting the steps or measuring the distance between the fence posts. Ravi muted the alert sound so she wouldn't hear it. He watched her carefully. She was holding her clipboard and pretending to write notes, but he could see her eyes darting around nervously. Ravi opened the microphone on the closest sensor. "Hello, Mrs. Doyle," he said calmly, his voice clear. Startled, she jumped and looked around. "Ravi, I didn't see you there. I am just making observations for the HOA," she said quickly. "You mean observations of my backyard?" Ravi said, raising an eyebrow. "Why not ask me to show you?" I can explain anything you want. Mrs. Doyle hesitated. I thought it would be faster if I just measured and recorded everything myself. Ravi smiled politely. I see. Well, I would be happy to help. Come in, and I can show you how the backyard is set up. Her eyes widened. Inside? Oh no, that's not necessary. I'll just continue my notes outside. Ravi shrugged. Suit yourself. He turned off the microphone and watched her finish writing. She stayed for a few more minutes, then left quickly. Ravi noted the time and made a mental record. He had learned that timing and patterns were important. Later that afternoon, Ravi received a package. It was small and nondescript, but it contained a piece of equipment that he had ordered months ago. It was a new sensor, one that could detect movement even through bushes. Ravi placed it near the back fence, hidden inside a fake rock. It connected directly to his server. Now anyone approaching from that side would be visible immediately. If Mrs. Doyle or anyone else tried to sneak in, he would know. Ravi's thoughts wandered to the city contract he had worked on before moving to Maple Grove. He had installed cameras and sensors across multiple neighborhoods, creating a network that connected to the city security system. Maple Grove was one of those neighborhoods, but the residents had no idea that he had designed everything. The HOA believed the system was managed by an outside company, but in truth, Ravi knew every line of code, every connection, and every hidden feature. That knowledge made him feel safe and a little amused. It was like having the keys to a city no one knew he owned. By evening, the neighborhood was quiet again. Ravi sat at his desk reviewing camera footage from earlier. He paused at one clip where Mrs. Doyle had been taking measurements. Something on her clipboard caught his attention. There was a small note that read, "Check equipment, especially backyard." Ravi frowned. Why was she interested in the equipment? He didn't have anything illegal or suspicious. All his gadgets were legal and safe. Yet she had been clearly trying to examine them. Ravi decided it was time to investigate further. He accessed the HOA network through his private server. Because he had designed the system, he could see the live status of every camera and sensor, even those registered to the HOA office. He noticed something strange. A small camera near the community park had been disabled yesterday. The log showed that it had been manually turned off from an HOA device, specifically a tablet registered to Mrs. Doyle. Ravi's suspicion grew. She had been disabling cameras before approaching his property. It wasn't an accident. She was actively trying to hide her actions. The next day, Ravi prepared a small experiment. He left a single garden light on the back fence, but he modified it to act as a fake sensor. It would alert him if someone touched it. He also placed a motion sensor near the side gate. Then he waited. Around noon, Mrs. Doyle returned. This time, she didn't bring a ladder, but she carried a measuring tape. She walked slowly along the fence, pretending to inspect the plants, but Ravi's sensors detected her every movement. The light on the fence blinked, recording her presence. He also saw her reach for the side gate, trying to open it. The motion sensor alerted him immediately. Ravi opened his camera microphone. "Mrs. Doyle, may I ask why you are touching my gate?" he said calmly. She froze, then looked around nervously. I was checking the fence alignment for the HOA guidelines," she stammered. Just checking," Ravi didn't accuse her. He simply watched as she hesitated, then walked back to the sidewalk, pretending to write notes in her clipboard. He made a mental note of her timing. She always came around midday, usually when most neighbors were inside. That evening, Ravi decided to review the city records he had stored in his personal drive. He accessed old installation logs for the neighborhood security system. It was fascinating. He realized that Mrs. Doyle's tablet had permissions that allowed her to temporarily disable cameras. He also noticed that she had been accessing certain equipment manuals, probably to understand how the devices worked. Ravi smiled. He had designed those manuals to be complicated enough that only an expert could fully understand them. She was curious, but she didn't know the full system. Ravi leaned back in his chair. He had two choices. He could confront her and risk conflict, or he could continue observing. Curiosity won. He decided to let her come closer and see what she would do next. Meanwhile, he improved his system further. He added a small drone program to patrol the backyard every hour. The drone had a camera and infrared sensors. Now, even in low light, Ravi could see any movement near his property. The following morning, Ravi was up early checking the system. Mrs. Doyle had not been outside yet. He walked through his backyard, making sure the sensors were properly hidden. Everything looked perfect. He felt a strange mix of satisfaction and excitement. The next time she came, he would know immediately what she was doing, and he would finally get answers about why she was so interested in his yard. Around 10, Ravi received another alert. This time it was unusual. It came from a camera near the front hedge. Someone was taking pictures. Ravi quickly checked the feed. To his surprise, it was Mrs. Doyle again. She had a small camera in her hand, snapping photos of his yard and the fence. He realized she wasn't just inspecting the yard. She wanted proof, something she could report to the HOA. Ravi activated the drone. It flew silently from the garage and hovered near the front yard, recording the scene from above. The drone's presence made Mrs. Doyle step back. She looked confused and frustrated. Ravi smiled, knowing that the tables had turned. She didn't know how many hidden cameras and sensors he had, nor did she realize that every move she made was being recorded. By evening, Ravi had saved all the footage. He reviewed each clip carefully, noting her behavior and timing. He realized she was persistent, but she wasn't dangerous. She was curious and determined, probably trying to catch him doing something wrong. Ravi decided to prepare for the next encounter. He would leave a small surprise that would teach her a lesson without causing harm. But for now, he simply enjoyed the control he had over the situation. Maple Grove was quiet again, and he was ready for the next round. Ravi sat in his garage late that night, watching the blinking lights of his security system. Every camera, every sensor, every drone feed was under his control. He felt a strange sense of satisfaction. Mrs. Doyle had tried to sneak into his yard multiple times, and he had caught her each time without her knowing the full extent of his system. But Ravi was not interested in punishing her. He only wanted to show her that curiosity had limits and that respect was always the best approach. He poured himself a cup of tea and leaned back in his chair. The footage from earlier in the day played on his monitor. Mrs. Doyle had been snapping photos of his backyard, crouching behind bushes and pretending to inspect the plants. She had not touched anything this time, but her curiosity was obvious. Ravi thought carefully. What could he do to make her understand, in a clever and harmless way, that she was crossing boundaries? The idea came quickly. He would create a small obstacle course in his backyard, disguised as part of the garden, and use his system to monitor her reaction if she tried to sneak closer again. He smiled at the thought. It would be a lesson in awareness, without embarrassing her too much. All he needed was subtlety and timing. The next morning, Ravi went to work in his yard. He rearranged a few bushes, placed small garden statues, and moved the lights to new positions. Some of the plants were placed near the fence, making it slightly harder to walk through the backyard without being noticed. He installed an additional set of sensors in the shrubs. Each sensor was connected to a light that would turn on if someone stepped too close. Then he programmed the drone to patrol the area at random times, so no one could predict when it would appear. By midday, everything was ready. Ravi opened his computer and checked each connection. All the sensors, cameras, and drones were active. He felt a thrill of excitement. He was not spying to punish. He simply wanted to protect his property and, if necessary, teach Mrs. Doyle a small lesson about respecting others' space. As he sat down with a notebook to record the details, a soft alert appeared on his screen. Movement detected near the back fence. Ravi glanced at the camera. It was her. Mrs. Doyle had returned again. She carried a small tape measure and notebook, looking even more determined than before. Ravi's lips curved into a small smile. Today's encounter would be interesting. She crouched slightly, pretending to inspect a plant near the fence, but Ravi could see her trying to inch closer to the hidden sensors. She did not notice the small lights that suddenly turned on around her path. The bushes shook slightly as the sensors detected her movement. She paused, looking puzzled, but did not turn back. The drone hovered above, silently recording her from a distance. Ravi opened the microphone. "Mrs. Doyle," he said calmly, "may I ask why you are here again?" She jumped slightly and looked around. "Oh, Ravi, I am just checking the fences for the HOA," she stammered. "I am ensuring everything meets the guidelines." Ravi nodded slowly. I understand, but please remember that this is private property. You are welcome to ask before entering, and I would be happy to show you anything you need. Mrs. Doyle hesitated. She glanced around nervously. I did not intend to disturb you. I was only trying to do my duty. Of course, Ravi said, keeping his tone calm and kind. Please be careful around the bushes. Some areas are tricky to walk through. He did not explain further. The lights flickered subtly, guiding her path and showing her which areas were monitored. She noticed them, but was unsure of their meaning. Ravi watched as she took a few cautious steps. She measured the plants and peeked at the hidden lights. Every movement she made was recorded by his cameras and drone. He could see her frown in confusion. She muttered to herself, trying to understand the sudden lights appearing near the bushes. Ravi held back a small laugh. It was working exactly as he had planned. She was being careful now, realizing that the yard was not as simple to navigate as she thought. After a few minutes, she paused and straightened up. Ravi spoke gently through the microphone. Mrs. Doyle, it seems you are having trouble finding your way. Would you like me to explain the garden layout? It might make your job easier. Her face turned red. Oh, no, I can manage. I need accurate notes for the HOA. Ravi nodded. I see. Well, please remember that this is private property. You can make notes from the sidewalk. That will keep you safe. Mrs. Doyle hesitated a moment longer. Then, realizing she could not approach the yard without being fully detected, she nodded quickly and moved toward the street. Ravi continued watching until she walked away. When she disappeared from view, he reviewed the footage. Every step she took had been captured, and he noted how she had reacted to the lights and the small obstacles. He smiled. This would help her understand boundaries without embarrassing her. Later that evening, Ravi reviewed the old installation logs of the neighborhood security system. He realized something important. Mrs. Doyle had administrative access to certain cameras and sensors, which meant she could potentially disable them. However, she did not know that he had full override control over the system. Even if she tried to turn off a device, Ravi could restore it immediately and track her movements. This knowledge gave him confidence. He knew she could not sneak around unnoticed again. Ravi thought about his plan for the next days. He would leave a few additional small surprises in the backyard, like fake animal tracks and gentle motion-activated lights, to make sure anyone trying to snoop would notice the system in action. He was not trying to punish Mrs. Doyle harshly. He only wanted her to learn that respecting property and asking for permission was always the right way. The next morning, Ravi checked his system again. Everything was functioning perfectly. The drone patrolled the yard, cameras monitored each angle, and sensors were ready for any movement. He sipped his tea and watched the street. Maple Grove looked calm, but Ravi knew that today Mrs. Doyle would likely return. The question was, would she learn her lesson or continue her curiosity? Around midday, an alert appeared. Movement at the side gate. Ravi quickly accessed the feed. It was her. She was approaching cautiously, holding her notebook and tape measure. He watched as she paused at the fence line, clearly calculating distances and angles. Ravi kept his voice calm and friendly through the microphone. Hello, Mrs. Doyle. Please remember that this is private property. I'm happy to help you from a safe distance. Mrs. Doyle glanced around nervously. Yes, of course. I am just recording measurements. She stepped back slightly, realizing the lights had turned on near the bushes and the drone was visible above her. Ravi noted her body language. She was curious, but she was also beginning to understand that sneaking around could have consequences. By evening, Ravi had recorded the entire day. Mrs. Doyle had not touched anything and had retreated without incident. Ravi reviewed the footage carefully, noting her patterns and timing. He realized she was persistent, but she was learning. She now understood that the yard was protected and that she could not approach without permission. Ravi felt satisfied. The plan was working. He had maintained control, ensured safety, and taught a subtle lesson about respect. Before going to bed, Ravi checked all his systems one last time. Cameras, sensors, and drones were fully operational. He felt a sense of peace. Maple Grove was quiet again and his yard was fully secure. Most importantly, he had found a way to deal with curiosity and overreach in a smart and harmless way. Mrs. Doyle might still be nosy, but now she would think twice before attempting another climb or peek. Ravi smiled. He had learned something too. Sometimes patience, careful planning, and understanding were the best tools to handle difficult situations. And tonight, Maple Grove was calm, safe, and quiet, just the way he liked it. Tomorrow, a new day would bring new challenges, but for now, everything was under control. The morning sun rose over Maple Grove and the neighborhood looked calm and familiar. Children were riding bicycles, sprinklers watered the lawns, and birds chirped in the trees. Ravi stepped outside with a cup of tea, observing the peaceful streets. Despite the calm, he knew Mrs. Doyle was still curious. She had not given up, and he suspected she would try again. Ravi had decided it was time for a more clever approach. He would set up a scenario where she could see how advanced his security system was without causing her harm. Ravi spent the entire morning working in his garage and yard. He installed a few new sensors hidden inside potted plants and garden decorations. These sensors were connected to a network he had designed specifically for situations like this. If anyone entered the yard without permission, the lights would flicker, a gentle chime would play, and the drone would hover silently nearby. The goal was not to scare or punish, but to educate about respect and boundaries. By noon, everything was ready. Ravi stepped back and examined the yard. The new setup looked natural. Plants, statues, and lights were arranged neatly. The sensors were invisible to anyone who did not know they were there. The drone waited silently in the garage, ready to patrol at a moment's notice. Ravi smiled, feeling confident. Today, Mrs. Doyle would finally understand the lesson without embarrassment. As expected, a soft alert appeared around 1 o'clock. Movement was detected near the back gate. Ravi quickly checked the feed. It was Mrs. Doyle. She walked slowly, carrying her clipboard and tape measure. Her eyes were scanning the fence line and the bushes as she tried to inch closer to the yard. She did not notice the small lights embedded in the plants, which turned on gently as she passed. The lights created a subtle pattern, showing her exactly where the sensors were located. Ravi activated the microphone calmly. "Mrs. Doyle, I see you are exploring again. Please remember this is private property. I am happy to explain everything from a safe distance." Startled, she froze for a moment. "Oh, Ravi, I was just recording measurements for the HOA," she said quickly. She tried to move past the lights, but every step triggered a gentle chime. She paused, clearly confused. The pattern of lights and sounds was new to her, and she didn't understand how it was happening. Ravi kept his tone friendly. "I understand your role, but the backyard is fully monitored. These lights and sensors help me keep everything safe. You do not need to enter to make your notes." Mrs. Doyle hesitated. She glanced around nervously, her curiosity clashing with caution. She realized she could not move forward without triggering more lights and chimes. She tried to crouch behind a bush to continue her measurements, but the motion sensor detected her immediately. A small camera feed showed her exactly how her movements were being monitored. Ravi leaned back and observed quietly. This was the moment he had been planning. Instead of embarrassing her, he was showing her the efficiency of the system. She had thought she could approach unnoticed, but everything she did was visible. It was a lesson in boundaries, and she was experiencing it firsthand. After a few minutes, Ravi spoke again through the microphone. "Mrs. Doyle, if you wish, I can show you how the system works. It might help you understand how to make accurate notes without entering the property." Her face turned slightly red, but she nodded. "Yes, that would be helpful," she admitted. Ravi opened the side gate and motioned her inside the small patio area, away from the sensors. "Here you can see everything from this spot," he said kindly. "These are the cameras, sensors, and lights. They are designed to detect movement and ensure safety. You do not need to step inside the yard to record accurate data." Mrs. Doyle studied the setup carefully. Ravi explained each feature in simple terms, showing her how the cameras worked, how the sensors detected motion, and how the drone patrolled the yard. She listened attentively, clearly impressed by the technology. She realized she had been trying to approach a system far more advanced than she had expected. I did not realize it was this advanced," she said softly. "I thought it was just ordinary cameras and lights." Ravi smiled. "Many people do. But this system also helps me feel safe and keeps the neighborhood secure. You are welcome to observe from here any time as long as you respect the boundaries." Mrs. Doyle nodded, finally understanding. She seemed calmer now. She put her notebook away and thanked Ravi. "I will be more careful from now on. I see the importance of respecting private property, while still ensuring HOA rules are followed." Ravi nodded, satisfied. "Thank you. I appreciate your cooperation." After she left, Ravi reviewed the footage again. Every step she had taken in the yard earlier was clearly visible. Her reactions to the lights, chimes, and drone were recorded. He saved the files under a special folder labeled Lessons Learned. This was not about punishment. It was about creating awareness. Later that evening, Ravi noticed something unusual on the neighborhood feed. A small group of children had gathered near the community park. They were playing near one of the cameras that had been disabled in the past. Ravi smiled, realizing he could extend the system to ensure safety without interfering with daily life. He made a few adjustments, activating small sensors in the park that would alert him if children entered dangerous areas like the pond or playground equipment. Ravi's attention returned to his yard. The lesson with Mrs. Doyle had worked perfectly. He had used intelligence and planning, not confrontation. She had learned the limits, and he had strengthened the security system without anyone being harmed or embarrassed. It was a perfect balance of control, patience, and creativity. The next morning, Maple Grove felt even quieter than usual. Ravi walked to the mailbox, greeting a few neighbors on the street. Everyone seemed happy, and no one suspected the drama that had occurred in his yard over the past days. Ravi felt a small sense of pride. He had handled a difficult situation with wisdom. As he returned home, he checked the system one more time. The cameras, sensors, and drone were all functioning perfectly. Every potential path into his backyard was monitored, and any unauthorized movement would trigger gentle alerts. Ravi leaned back in his chair and reflected. The situation with Mrs. Doyle had been unexpected, but it taught him a valuable lesson. Sometimes patience and clever planning were more effective than confrontation or anger. In the following days, Ravi noticed subtle changes in Mrs. Doyle's behavior. She still walked through the neighborhood with her clipboard, but she no longer tried to sneak into his yard. Instead, she made notes from a distance, respecting the boundaries. Ravi continued monitoring, ensuring that the system worked flawlessly. One afternoon, Ravi received an unexpected message from Mrs. Doyle. She had written a small note, expressing appreciation for showing her the system and explaining that she understood the importance of privacy and safety. Ravi smiled, realizing that the clever lesson had worked better than he had expected. From that day forward, Ravi felt a sense of peace. Maple Grove was quiet, his yard was secure, and even the persistent curiosity of Mrs. Doyle had been addressed in a smart, harmless way. Ravi returned to his projects in the garage, building new gadgets and improving the system. The neighborhood remained safe, and the lesson about respect had been quietly learned. Ravi understood something important. Being prepared, using intelligence, and remaining calm could solve problems far better than anger or confrontation. Maple Grove was peaceful again, and Ravi knew that the system he had built would continue to protect his home and provide a clever way to teach lessons to anyone who tried to cross boundaries. By evening, as the sun set, Ravi looked at his backyard one last time. The lights were soft, the drone rested in the garage, and the sensors waited silently. Maple Grove was calm, and Ravi felt satisfied. Today had been another victory, not through force, but through intelligence, creativity, and patience. The morning sun rose over Maple Grove, casting soft light over the clean streets. Ravi walked outside with a cup of tea, enjoying the peaceful atmosphere. Children were playing on the sidewalks, sprinklers watered the lawns, and neighbors exchanged friendly greetings. Maple Grove seemed calm, almost as if nothing unusual had ever happened. Yet Ravi knew better. Over the past days, he had handled a delicate situation, and today would bring the final chapter. Mrs. Doyle had changed her behavior. She still walked through the neighborhood with her clipboard, but she kept her distance from Ravi's yard. She had learned to respect boundaries, at least for now. Ravi had been monitoring her quietly through his security system, noting that her footsteps were measured and careful, without attempts to sneak. Ravi smiled. The lesson had worked, but he wanted to make it last. He decided to create a final scenario that would reinforce the importance of respect and curiosity. Ravi spent the morning preparing his yard. He rearranged a few more potted plants and garden decorations, creating a subtle maze near the back fence. Small sensors and lights were carefully placed within the shrubs, activating when anyone entered. The drone was programmed to patrol every 15 minutes, its camera ready to record any movement. Ravi wanted to make the system visible enough for learning but subtle enough to avoid embarrassment. By midday, everything was ready. Ravi watched the street from his porch, sipping tea. He knew Mrs. Doyle would be passing by soon, as she had her usual routine. Around 1 o'clock, an alert appeared on his monitor. Movement near the side gate. Ravi quickly checked the feed. It was her. She was walking with her usual clipboard, pausing to glance at the fence and the plants. Ravi smiled. Today would be a gentle but clear final lesson. Mrs. Doyle approached slowly, clearly curious about the subtle changes in the yard. The small lights embedded in the plants turned on as she passed, creating soft glows around her feet. Each step she took triggered gentle chimes. She paused, startled, looking at the lights and the soft sounds. Ravi activated the microphone calmly. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Doyle. Please remember this is private property. You are welcome to observe from the sidewalk or ask for permission to enter safely." She looked startled and flushed slightly. "Oh, Ravi, I am just checking measurements for the HOA," she said quickly. She hesitated, unsure of whether to continue. Every step she took now caused the lights to respond. The soft chimes echoed slightly, making her realize that the yard was fully monitored. Ravi kept his voice calm and friendly. "I understand your duty, but you can make notes safely without stepping inside the yard. This system is designed to protect both property and people." Mrs. Doyle paused for a moment, glancing around. She seemed to understand. She carefully took a few steps back and stopped, holding her clipboard at chest height. I see. Your system is very impressive. I did not realize it was this advanced." Ravi smiled. "Many people do not. It helps me keep the property safe, but it also helps teach lessons about respecting boundaries. You are welcome to observe from a safe distance." Mrs. Doyle nodded slowly, her face showing a mix of surprise and respect. "I will be careful from now on. I understand the importance of safety and privacy." Ravi watched as she carefully walked away, returning to the sidewalk. He turned off the microphone and reviewed the footage. Every step she had taken was recorded, showing her reactions to the lights and chimes. Ravi saved the video under the folder, "Final Lesson." It was a record of learning, not punishment. After she left, Ravi reflected on the past few days. The situation with Mrs. Doyle had started as a challenge but had ended as a success. He had managed to maintain peace, teach respect, and ensure safety without causing embarrassment or conflict. His security system had proven its value not only in protecting property, but also in managing difficult situations intelligently. Later in the afternoon, Ravi received a small envelope at his doorstep. It was from Mrs. Doyle. Curious, he opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten note. It read, "Dear Ravi, I want to thank you for showing me the system in your yard and explaining how it works. I now understand the importance of privacy and safety. I will respect boundaries and ensure that the HOA guidelines are followed without unnecessary intrusion. Thank you for your patience and understanding." Ravi smiled. He folded the note carefully and placed it on his desk. It was a small gesture, but it showed that the lesson had been effective. Mrs. Doyle had learned to balance her responsibility as HOA president with respect for private property. The rest of the day passed quietly. Ravi checked the cameras, sensors, and drone. Everything was functioning perfectly. He knew that his yard was secure and Maple Grove was peaceful. He returned to his garage, inspired to continue working on new projects. The security system had proven its value not just in protecting property, but also in teaching lessons about awareness, respect, and responsibility. As the sun began to set, Ravi stepped outside one last time. The neighborhood was bathed in golden light. Children laughed as they played. Sprinklers sprayed water gently and neighbors waved to each other. Maple Grove was calm, orderly, and safe. Ravi felt satisfied. He had handled a difficult situation with intelligence and patience. He had maintained respect, protected his property, and taught a lesson in a clever way. Ravi thought about the future. He could continue improving his security system, adding new sensors and drones or creating even smarter alerts. But he also realized that the human element was just as important. Respect, patience, and understanding could solve more problems than force or anger ever could. The experience with Mrs. Doyle had shown him that even difficult situations could be handled wisely, if approached with intelligence and calmness. As darkness fell, the lights in his yard glowed softly, marking the boundaries of his property. The drone returned to its charging station, and the sensors waited silently, ready for any movement. Ravi felt a deep sense of peace. Maple Grove was calm, his yard was secure, and the lessons had been learned. Ravi sat on his porch for a while, sipping tea and watching the neighborhood. He saw Mrs. Doyle walking along the street, clipboard in hand, but she kept her distance. She waved politely and Ravi waved back. There was no tension, no suspicion, only mutual respect. The lesson had worked and both sides had learned something valuable. Finally, Ravi went inside. He reviewed the day's footage one last time and saved the files. Final lesson would remain as a record of what had happened. He knew it might be needed in the future, but more importantly, it was a reminder that intelligence, patience, and planning could solve problems effectively. As Ravi turned off the lights and closed his laptop, he felt satisfied. Maple Grove was peaceful. The HOA was aware but respectful, and his security system was fully operational. He had handled a curious neighbor, maintained safety, and taught a lasting lesson without conflict. Ravi leaned back in his chair and smiled. The yard was quiet, the neighborhood calm, and the evening peaceful. Today marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. He knew that Maple Grove would continue to be a safe, secure, and happy place. And he also knew that sometimes, clever planning and patience were the best tools for solving challenges. For Ravi, the adventure was over. Maple Grove had returned to calm and order, and he could now focus on his hobbies, projects, and the peaceful life he had always wanted. The lesson with Mrs. Doyle would remain in his mind, a reminder of the power of intelligence, patience, and respect. As the stars appeared in the sky, Maple Grove slept quietly. Ravi's yard was secure, his system functioning perfectly, and his mind at peace. The challenge of the curious HOA president had ended, leaving behind a story of cleverness, patience, and wisdom.